This is Tausha, and Tausha is about to expose her 5th ex-husband for murdering her 3rd ex-husband, but there's something she's hiding from the cops. Okay, so one day, Tausha fell in love with this guy Mitch, and their relationship was going really well. They make a baby, start building their lives together, but just when he starts settling into his new role as a father, she cheats, breaks up with him, and then moves in with this guy, Greg. This hurts Mitch real bad, but he decides to put himself together and move on with his life. But there's just one problem. He wants custody of their little daughter, but Tausha, she also wants custody. So they fight and argue day after day, and sometimes it even gets physical. One day, Tausha comes up with a plan to end the custody battle once and for all. She turns the house upside down, breaks a few glasses, and calls Greg. And when he answers, she starts crying over the phone, telling him that Mitch beat her up and threatened her and her daughter. Greg rushes back home, and when he sees Tausha looking all roughed up, he becomes very angry, and he attempts to go out to confront Mitch, but Tausha begs him to just let it slide. A few days later, she calls Greg again, crying on the phone. This time, she tells him that Mitch broke into the house and SA'd her and their young daughter. Greg rushed back home really angry, and he tells Tausha he's going to do something this time and there is no stopping him. Tausha concurs. She tells him that she's scared for her life and that there is only one way she's sure she'd be safe: if Mitch is unalive. Now, Greg was really angry, but he thought of unaliving someone. It was not just something he had in mind. Tausha, she's crying and trembling, and she keeps repeating that Mitch is going to hurt her. So Greg says, "Okay, I'll do it. I love you and I can't let anything happen to you." Tausha gives him a light kiss, a tight hug, and whispers into his ear, "I love you too." The following day, she calls Mitch on the phone and tells him there's something really important she wants to tell him. She invited him to Greg's farm, and once he showed up, Greg popped out of nowhere with a gun, and that was the end of Mitch Kemp. Now, with no Mitch in the picture and no police case, Tausha and Greg are living their best lives. They go on vacations, take evening walks, and enjoy their newfound freedom without a care in the world. Greg is so happy. He loves the way Tausha makes him feel, and he tells himself, "I love this woman so much and I'll do anything to make her happy." One day, Greg closed from work early and rushed home to surprise Tausha, but when he opened the door, he found her in bed with another man, Keith. This gets Greg so angry he breaks up with her and sends her packing, and so she moves in with Keith. Keith is an outgoing guy, so they party a lot. One day, they were drinking at home and Tausha got so high that she revealed her biggest secret. She told Keith her immediate ex loved her so much he helped her unalive an older ex. Keith is shocked, but he tells himself it's probably just the drink talking, and that day passes and they go on with their lives. Few months later, Tausha decided to work in a daycare to raise some money, but shortly after she resumed work, she did something unbelievable. One day, she's working her shift and she sights a really handsome man with his son in the playground, and she tells herself, "I must have this man." So she comes up with a plan. She gives her colleague a handwritten message that reads, "Call me," to deliver to him. Later that evening, Dwayne calls her and they talk for hours. The talk is so good it stretches into the following day, and it feels like they have known one another for years. The next day, Tausha invited herself to Dwayne's house during her lunch break, and right in the middle of their conversation, she pulled a few strings and they did the doo-doo on that first meeting. Then she starts love bombing his son Booba, making him grow fond of her. And in no time, Dwayne began to think like a family man. My son will have a sister and would be a happy blended family. Or so he thought. 1 month later, Kate finds out Tausha has been cheating on him. He gets angry and sends her packing, and she and her daughter moves in with Dwayne. Everything was going really well. I mean, Dwayne constantly felt like he was on top of the world. But few months down the line, he started to notice something quite worrisome. Tausha seemed to have a habit of telling lies unprovoked. Her stories were always changing. Growing suspicious, Dwayne decided to conduct research on the internet to learn more about the woman living in his home. And to his greatest surprise, he finds a marriage certificate showing she had been married to a man named Mitch Kemp. Confused and angry, Dwayne confronted Tausha with his findings, and so she had to come clean. She had been married a total of 5 times by the age of 30. At this point, Dwayne is devastated, so he tells his mom, and desperate to learn more, his mom reaches out to Tausha's dad and she says, "My son is dating your daughter and I just need to talk to you about it." But to her greatest surprise, Tausha's dad says the most unbelievable thing. "Ma'am, I need you not to ever call me again and tell your son I said run." Remember Keith, Tausha's ex? Okay, so few weeks later, Keith overdosed on drugs and called Tausha for help. Tausha called Dwayne and frantically begged him to help her ex. Before now, Dwayne had never heard of the man, but he's a nice guy, so he rushed down to Keith's house, put him into his truck, and drove him to the hospital. Keith made a full recovery, but just before he was discharged, Dwayne asked him about his personal experience with Tausha. Keith tells him a lot of stuff, but then he also adds that one night, Tausha drunkenly said she had her fifth husband, Mitch, murdered. At first, Dwayne didn't know what to make of it, but then he figured it was probably just Tausha doing what she knows how to do best: lie. A few months later, Dwayne caught Tausha cheating, and combined with all the lies she had been telling, it hurt him so badly that he ended the relationship and sent her packing. One night after the breakup, Dwayne is on his computer and he realizes Tausha's MySpace social media account is still signed in on it. So he starts snooping around, and then he notices that a particular account has been texting her non-stop for a long time. He clicks on the message, and when the page loads, he realizes it's Mitch Kemp's relative that's been asking about his whereabouts. Apparently, Mitch had been missing for over 4 years, but because he was wanted for theft-related charges, the cops just assumed he was on the run. Immediately, it all clicked in Dwayne's head. What if the story about Tausha unaliving her ex-husband was actually true? And so he gathered all his findings and shared them with the police, and with that, they decided to bring her in for questioning. By now, Tausha had moved. She was in Alabama living with a new man. The police track her down, take her to the station, and throw the 4-year-old question: where is Mitch Kemp? And she says, I don't know, we broke up a long time ago. But the cops kept asking the question over and over again, and Tausha started to crack. Her story began to change. First, she says she doesn't know anything about Mitch Kemp's whereabouts. Then, she claims Greg confessed to her that he had shot Mitch after he found out she had still been sleeping with him, but that she had nothing to do with it. The cop says, okay, I believe you, but for us to be able to pin this on Greg, we need a body. And all of a sudden, Tausha remembers where he buried it. She takes them to the farm, and there they find Mitch Kemp's remains. He had 6 gunshot wounds to the chest. Now, the cops not only have suspicions, they also have a body. With that, they arrest Tausha and charge her with murder. They also arrest Greg and try to get him to confess about Tausha's role in the murder. But he loves her so much, so for 3.5 months, he doesn't say anything. But you know Tausha, she tells the police a new version of the story, putting all the blame on Greg. She said she had actually invited Mitch over to the farm to show him photographs of their daughter, but that when they arrived, Greg popped out of nowhere and shot him out of jealousy, and she was too scared to report the case. When Greg hears this, he gets really angry. So during the trial, he testified against her, saying that she manipulated him into committing the crime. Tausha tried to deny it all, but she had told way too many lies to be taken seriously. All her exes testified against her, and in 2010, she was sentenced to life in prison, while Greg got 19 years.